What's going on, everybody? Sports Scuba Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving break. It was definitely needed, and we're in the home stretch here before the end of the semester, so a lot to look forward to here. Just got to get through a couple weeks. Thank you for listening in here. I am Nathan Schivins, back again for another edition of the Sports Scoop. A lot to talk about as always. The Steelers, got to talk about the Steelers, even though there's really nothing new to talk about other than another horrendous performance and even more calls for firings at the head coaching and really the entire coaching staff position. And gonna talk about the Steelers a lot. Where they're at here is they're now 6-6 on the season. Gonna talk some of the rest of the NFL because there were some really good games. That Bills Steelers was not one of those games, but there were a lot of good games this weekend and this past week, obviously on Thanksgiving in the NFL. Gonna talk about those games. Gonna talk about Pitt football laying an egg against Miami, allowing Miami to stay in the hunt to potentially make the playoff. I'll talk about Pitt. I'll talk about Miami. I'll talk about the college football playoff, where everything stands there, because there's still a lot of moving parts, even though the regular season has come to an end. There's still some teams where we're not quite sure who's all going to make it, what the seeds are going to be. A lot of different scenarios. Got to talk about Lane Kiffin deciding to leave Ole Miss for LSU. Not only that decision, but waiting until the very last possible minute to announce it, which really irked many people associated with Ole Miss and really across the country. We're going to get into that and some of the other hirings, mostly in the SEC. A lot of SEC hirings at Florida, at Auburn, at Arkansas, and obviously at LSU, which we'll get into as well, because that's very compelling right now. And if we have time, I don't know, a little NBA maybe, although there's been no really huge developments over the past week. But it's going to be a heavy football show today, talking NFL, talking college football. Going to start off as always with your Pittsburgh Steelers, who fall to 6-6 after losing 26-7 to the Buffalo Bills. The Steelers had a 7-0 lead at one point. They led at halftime 7-3, and right off the bat in the second half, it was disaster. First play from scrimmage, Rodgers drops back. He throw a deep shot, take a shot on first down. And he's scrambling in the pocket a little bit, and he doesn't see Joey Bosa coming from behind. And he really jumps on top of him. Strip sack, fumble, Buffalo recovers, touchdown. So immediately it's 10-7 Buffalo, with the Steelers getting the ball to start the second half. And from there, Rodgers got cut on the upper part of his nose. Obviously he has the wrist, which he really didn't move. He didn't move his wrist or his arm, that left arm, really much at all in Sunday's game. He was completely hampered, significantly hampered in this game. Mason Rudolph comes in. They get a big pass interference on third down to keep that drive going, but the next play he overthrows Darnell Washington. It's intercepted. Bills score again, and at that point you knew it was over. Later on, it's 23-7, and you're thinking, hey, the Steelers, they were at like the 13, 14-yard line, 4th and 3. You're thinking, hey, I was just thinking, there's still 10.5 minutes left in the game. You got all 3 timeouts. Kick a field goal, make it 23-10. It's still a 2-possession game, because how likely are you going to get 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions with this Steelers team? Incredibly unlikely. And they go from 4th down, they run the worst play, the most predictable play you've ever seen. They just ran it up the middle, and they They got nothing, and they turned it over on downs, and that was it. There were fire Tomlin chants raining down. There were boos raining down. Renegade was booed to start the fourth quarter. It was a disaster. It was an embarrassment at Acrisure Stadium on Sunday afternoon going into the evening. And feels like this is a crossroads for this franchise, but it feels like there's been a lot of games like this where this team is at a crossroads. But I think this game really emphasizes that, and is really the game that you would consider like something's got to change one way or another. Either they go on a big run or they collapse, and there's firings and there's significant changes with the roster because something different is needed. And it's been obvious for years, I would argue. But now the vast majority of Steeler Nation certainly has come around to that reality that there needs to be changes. This is actually getting worse. They're 6-6. They could be worse than that, honestly. And they play Baltimore this coming Sunday for the division lead. And I really don't think this season anybody deserves to make the playoffs out of the AFC North. Kind of similarly to the ACC, which in college football, which I'll get to a little later. But just a disastrous year for this division. The Ravens, I mean, whoever wins that game on Sunday is probably in pole position, but neither of these teams look very good at all. They're not inspiring at all. And for the Steelers, you got the draft in Pittsburgh this coming April. Aaron Rodgers is the last several weeks is showing his age, and part of that's injury, but he's 41 years old, and he's very gimpy in the pocket. He's anxious in the pocket. He's not standing in there. It's been documented. He moves around in the pocket when he really shouldn't, when he doesn't need to, and he's running into some sacks and some pressures. He did that several times against the Bills on Sunday. That strip sack was one of them. I mean, he was moving around. He didn't really need to initially, and I think he was going to try to throw it away, but he was just a tick late. Bosa gets to him. Ball's out, touchdown. Bills take the lead, and all the momentum the Steelers would have potentially had was gone. And the momentum to this season is completely gone. There's no momentum. You got Patrick Queen not tackling people once again and leaving the game hurt and chiming in and going at some Steelers media and some different people on Steelers Twitter. And really, he's not in a position to go after anybody with his play. And the thing he was responding to is a very fair criticism. But you had Cam Hayward trash talking and having an issue with Josh Allen for a large portion of the game. And what did Cam Hayward do in this game? He made one play that I remember, that I can recall. This defense, T.J. Watt left at the very end limping. He had multiple opportunities. He was right there to sack Josh Allen in big spots. He did not. He missed those sacks. He is under contract for at least 2 more seasons with over $40 million a year being paid to him, while Myles Garrett is going to be over 20 sacks after next week, and he's barely at 7. And I'm bearing the lead here in this game, which is that the Steelers gave up a ton of rushing yards, just whatever the Bills wanted at times. And they would just run the same play over and over again. It perfectly epitomized the Steelers and this defense under Mike Tomlin. Absolutely no adjustments whatsoever. Just running to the outside every time. And the corner is playing back, and then the corner, usually Joey Porter, would have to go up and make the tackle, And Joey Porter did a nice job in making those tackles on James Cook, honestly. They could have gave up over 300 yards rushing, if not for Porter making some tackles in space. But they waited till the very end of the game to bring Porter up. But then you bring Porter up, and then Josh Allen had a couple over-the-top passes completed to really ice the game. So it's just a complete mess with this team. Highest paid defense in the league once again, and obviously they're playing like one of the worst. One week they're giving up a ton of passing yards. The other week they're getting gashed in the run game. It is a disaster, and it's really a tipping point with this team, with this franchise. The fans have collectively had it with the Steelers, how they've been running things, how they've been operating for a very long time, and this is the tipping point. The criticisms are certainly warranted, and Coach Tomlin said as much after the game. So did Aaron Rodgers. They can boo, and they're well within their right to boo after that performance. And the Fire Tomlin chants obviously were raining down at various points in the game. It's just a messy situation. It really is. And now, you wouldn't know it, but this team's tied for first in their division. But like I mentioned, this division's been horrible all season, and the Steelers have really been horrible for large points of this season. And that's an unacceptable performance at home in not a must-win game, but a really, really important game for both teams. And to have that performance, I mean, I don't even want to get into the offense because it was just a disaster as well. But Aaron Rodgers, he's looking, and there's really nobody to throw to. There's no receivers. DK Metcalf, he's had his moments, but he hasn't been what the Steelers thought he would be when they brought him in and traded for him and gave him all that money. The lack of a second wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf is evident now more than ever. And I thought Calvin Austin, could he take that next step and be that second receiver, but he hasn't shown that. He just hasn't shown that. I don't even know if he caught a pass. He might have caught one pass in this game for the Steelers. And Rodgers went deep to Roman Wilson. They couldn't connect. And yeah, it was just a disaster. Darnell Washington led the team in receiving yards. And yeah, I don't even know what else to add. I mean, this is just a team with an obvious need to move in another direction with really the entire coaching staff. It really needs to be an entire overhaul of not only the coaching staff, but of the way things are done and what's prioritized with the Steelers, because they're prioritizing a defense and a scheme that is 10 years old and not effective at all anymore. And it's very evident, but they keep sticking with it and it keeps burning them. And they have an offense that hasn't gelled in 10 years. And it's not getting worse, but it's been bad, really bad for years and years and years. And there needs to be a philosophy change with defensive scheme, with offensive. There needs to be a prioritization of offensive prowess and an offensive mind that is in with the times in the NFL in 2025. Because I thought Arthur Smith could be the guy, but it's just really, it's not working out at all. It just really isn't. And it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. And more importantly, it needs to be from the top of this organization, of this franchise, a philosophical change in how things are going to be done. We're going to invest in offense, find a quarterback, get another couple receivers, prioritize this run game, bring somebody in who can coach an offensive line, and brings somebody else defensively in. Just brings a completely fresh mind defensively, because they hired in-house with Terrell Austin, obviously, and it's been not good. And when you hire in-house and you expect things to change, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And that's what the Steelers are in for and have witnessed now and are a part of, because nothing has changed at all. And they tried to change at the end of the game, and it was way too late for anything. And so, yeah, big changes are needed with this franchise, top to bottom. There needs to be a prioritization of offense. They need to get away from paying old defensive players that are out of their prime. I said it when it happened on my podcast, We Are Family Pittsburgh Sports Podcast, when the Steelers kind of bent the knee and signed T.J. Watt to that extension. This is not going to work out, and it just hasn't. He's not performing to the level of a top 5 defensive end in the NFL. I can name at least a dozen players who played better off the edge, and that's being generous, than T.J. Watt this season. And his impact is just not felt. And I know they're chipping him. I know they're doubling him and sometimes tripling him and making it impossible. But you don't think Myles Garrett's getting doubled and chipped and just everything to prevent him from getting to the quarterback? And it's not deterring him at all. In fact, he's having an historic defensive season. So I really don't want to hear that at this point. And Cam Hayward, he was complaining for large parts of training camp for more money. The Steelers give him more money, and he has not been good this season. He's been bad in the run game. If you watch him, he gets pushed back on almost every play by interior offensive linemen. And he's trash talking with Josh Allen. How about you make a play? How about you make a play instead of trash talking a star quarterback when you've done nothing all season production-wise? That was really embarrassing for Cam Hayward. I mean, I don't care if he needs you in the stomach or whatever. You got to actually perform to be talking trash, and that goes for this whole Steelers team. And yeah, it's really been Cam Hayward there and Patrick Queen, and those two have been some of the least performing defensive players on the Steelers this season. So it's a mess. It's a mess with the Steelers. They got the Ravens twice. They play the Dolphins at home, at the Lions, at the Browns. Like I mentioned, they end with the Ravens at home. How many wins they have beats me. I'm hoping it's 8 at this point, just so that they can have a losing record and we can put that streak to bed, that talking point for people who defend this coaching staff and the way things have been done with the Steelers. But in all honesty, they need to, preferably lose out at this point. They need a high draft pick. They need to reevaluate also how they're drafting and actually targeting positions of need. You got to look in the first round. Quarterback, I don't know in this draft if that's going to be the right move. I don't really like the quarterbacks, but you got to look at wide receivers. Got to look at some defensive. Got to look at a big linebacker, an actual tall, strong linebacker instead of these undersized linebackers who are afraid to tackle. And they got to get better at every position, honestly, except maybe tight end, I guess. But even Jonnu Smith hasn't. Him and Aaron haven't had that connection all season. We like what we're seeing from Darnell Washington, and Freiermuth of late has been better. But really every position except tight end, and I would argue quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers has done kind of what I hoped he'd do this season. But it is a franchise that is at a pivot point and can either keep going in this completely wrong direction or can adjust, take a step back, adapt with the times and catch up to everyone else in this league in terms of how they go about things with acquiring players, with offensive scheme, defensive scheme, and drafting. So that's where we're at with the Steelers. I could go for the whole show about the Steelers and what's wrong with this team and franchise, but I got a lot I want to talk about, so we're going to put a pin in that for probably next week when they probably lose to Baltimore, and I'm going to say the same things in a different way. So we're going to take a little break here. Coming up on the other side, I'm talking Pitt, I'm talking college football, playoffs coming up, conference championship games coming up here. Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM. And welcome back to the Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. Want to talk actually some NFL, some takeaways here from the past week, because there was a lot of good games, like I mentioned. Obviously, the Packers getting a huge win in Detroit. The Lions just could not stop the Packers whatsoever. Jordan Love and that offense was cooking on all cylinders in this matchup, and the Lions had a chance. They went for him fourth down instead of kicking a field goal, and they don't get it, and then they get the ball back, and if they would have kicked a field goal again, a touchdown would have won them the game instead of tied it. But they will go for it again. They don't get it, and it was just a weird offensive game for the Lions. They were playing catch-up really the whole game, but they were doing well at times, but they had a lot of negative plays. It was just really weird, but the Packers get a huge win. The Lions are in a really bad spot. That was a huge game for both teams, and the Lions now 7-5. They're looking up at the Bears at 9-3. I'm going to get to, and obviously the Packers at 8-3-1 who get that win. Really tough loss for the Lions. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown got hurt early in that game and didn't return. I think he's going to be all right. That's what the reports are indicating. But nonetheless, in the game, that was a huge loss for the Lions with not having Brown. And then, obviously, a huge loss because they lost. And now you look at the Bears who beat the Eagles on Friday afternoon, Black Friday, and just dominated the Eagles with the running game. I mean, you bring in Swift, you bring in Manungai, bring in Swift, bring in Manungai, and when you have that tandem that you can just swap in and out, like Swift and Manungai, one of them you use a few times in a row. Oh, he's a little tired out. We're bringing Swift, who's fresh now. Oh, Swift, he carried it a few times. He's a little tired out. Let's bring back in Manungai. They really have a good thing going there with Ben Johnson, and the Eagles just could not stop it. It was really crazy to watch. I mean, they were just running it up the middle. They would go side to side. They would do a lot of different exotic runs. But a lot of it was just up the middle, and the Eagles couldn't stop them. And the Philly faithful was none too pleased with that. They were booing frequently during the game. They left early because the Bears got that 2-possession lead. And then the Eagles, which I hate when these teams do this, they got a touchdown, and they're down 8. If they just kick the extra point, they're down 8. And you put that off until the very end to go for 2. Instead, they went for 2 immediately. They don't get it, and now they're down 9, and the game's over. For me, it's just really a head scratcher. I guess they use these analytics that say you should go for 2 first. But I just feel like for the psyche of a team, you kick the extra point, you're down 8, and you wait till you get that next touchdown to go for 2 and try and tie the game. I just didn't like that at all. I don't like when coaches do that, make that decision, because they never get the 2-point conversion there. It's crazy to me. And so the Eagles were down 9, and by that point everybody's leaving. with a few minutes left, even though the Eagles got the ball back. And if they would have just kicked the extra point, they would have been down 8, just needing a touchdown, a 2-point conversion. And instead they're down 9, and they'd need a touchdown and then an onside kick. And so I think that was bad coaching by Sirianni. And the Eagles now 8-4, lost a couple in a row. They just don't look right this season at all. And good for the Bears. This is uncharted waters for the Bears. Really, since a long time ago. Really, with Caleb Williams, he's probably their best quarterback in a couple decades. I gotta be and that's not even saying much. But if you're above average, then you're going to be the best Bears quarterback in a while. And he's just been what Ben Johnson needed. He makes throws down the field when he has to. He can scramble. His ability to throw from out of the pocket, get out of the pocket, and make throws on the run. And he's not turning it over as much. But obviously the big story in that game was the Bears' running game. That's just something we haven't seen with the Bears in a while, just that toughness paired with a really solid quarterback. And the Bears are dangerous now. They really are. They're leading that division. They play the Packers, I think, this weekend, this Sunday. So, we'll get a very, very good indication of who's going to come out on top in that division this weekend. Bears-Packers. Packers are at home. They are early 6.5-point favorites, but, that's going to be a really interesting game. But good for the Bears. Ben Johnson taking his shirt off after the game. He's fired up. He's doing a great job in year 1 with Chicago. Obviously, got to give props to the Cowboys. 2 really impressive wins in a row against the 2 teams who are just in the Super Bowl, the Eagles and the Chiefs. They win 31-28. Dak Prescott doing a really solid job. George Pickens has been incredible. CeeDee Lamb, obviously. But they're getting some defensive stops now. Getting Overshown back was huge. You add Quinnen Williams to stop the run. You add Logan Wilson to help in pass and run coverage at the linebacker position, with their corners at least semi-healthy right now. And, they're cooking on all cylinders. And I like Javonte Williams in the run game. And so they're really, they have a chance to make the playoffs here now. And they play at Detroit on Thursday. And you feel like, the Cowboys have a razor-thin margin of error, but whoever wins that game is going to keep their playoff hopes alive, and whoever loses, it's going to be a really uphill climb. Even though the Cowboys look like one of the best teams in the NFC for sure. So kudos to Dallas, some really season-defining wins and culture wins for Brian Schottenheimer, who's doing a really nice job right now. With these head coaches, it's all about, for me, what they're doing on their side of the ball. Brian Schottenheimer, he's an offensive coach, and they have one of, if not the best offense in football. So that is a surprising thing, because a lot of people were kind of questioning Schottenheimer and that hire, but he's been really solid for the Cowboys. So, and for the Chiefs, they're 6-6 now, just like the Steelers, just like Baltimore, and they have a really uphill battle. They have to almost be perfect the rest of the way, too, which they're certainly capable of, but they haven't shown it this season. So, anyway, the Bengals, they crushed the Ravens. They get some 5 turnovers on Lamar and the Ravens. Just a ugly game for Baltimore. Joe Burrow wasn't great in his return, but he was good enough. And the Bengals honestly could have had more points, because they get the fumble, and they're already first and goal at the 2, and they're not able to get a touchdown. And so it could have been even more, but it was a terrible loss for Baltimore. But luckily, the Steelers are in their division, and the Bengals and the Browns. So, but who knows? I mean, Cincinnati, they'd have to win out probably, but Cardinals at home, Browns at home, those should be wins. At the Dolphins, that should be a win. You host the Ravens and you're at the Bills. At the Bills is going to be tough, but if you win that game somehow, the Bengals might win this division, and nobody's talking about it. And they got the tiebreaker over the Steelers, I believe. So it'll be fascinating to see which poverty team here in the AFC North makes the playoffs. So, moving on. Texans, big win over the Colts. I picked the Texans to win that game, and they almost choked the game at the end, but they were able to hold on, get a defensive stop. And now the AFC South is a lot tighter. Jacksonville destroys the Titans, and they're now first in the AFC South. But you got the Texans 7-5, Colts 8-4. It's going to go down to the wire who wins that division and who's a wild card team. But big win for Houston. Daniel Jones, props to him. He's playing very hampered right now, and he's just slinging the ball around as best he can. But it's going to be tough for the Colts the rest of the way. And it's really a crazy turn of events for their season. I mean, they were just on cruise control a month ago, and now they're almost in damage control. A huge win for Carolina over the Rams. The Panthers are the most confusing team in the league. Their offense will look completely anemic and hapless for large stretches for multiple games, and then they'll throw for 400 yards, and Bryce Young will look like the best quarterback in football. And they get a huge turnover on Matt Stafford, who turned it over 3 times in the game, and that really aided the Panthers. But it's a huge win for Carolina in the NFC South. The Bucs won, but that lead is a half game right now. So, very interesting there. But other than that, I mean, Broncos crazy game against the Commanders on Sunday night. They get the win. They eke by again. And yeah, Jets, congrats to Tyrod Taylor. I love Tyrod Taylor. And he gets the win for the Jets against Kirk Cousins. So there you go. But I just want to talk real quick about Week 14 games here. I mean, Cowboys-Lions is huge. Steelers-Ravens is huge. Colts-Jaguars is huge. Bengals-Bills is a big game. Bears-Packers is huge. Texans-Chiefs is huge. Eagles-Chargers is huge. There's a bunch of games with major implications for the playoffs that are going down this week in Week 14. And so, very excited for that. Obviously, the Patriots play the Giants tonight, but we expect New England to get the win there, although crazier things have happened this season. But usually the Giants, even if they're in good position, they choke the game away. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of who they are. I saw somebody said they're like the best 2-10 team in the country, or I mean in history. And I tend to agree. I mean, they could easily be at least 6-6 right now, or 7-5, and instead they're 2-10, and I think maybe already eliminated from the playoffs. I'm not positive. Let me take a look here. Yeah, they're eliminated now. So New Orleans, Arizona, the Giants, the Raiders, and the Titans are already eliminated from the playoffs. So that's what we're looking like in the NFL right now. Very compelling down the stretch here for teams not named the Steelers. It's compelling. And now I want to talk about another kind of disastrous game. Pitt football losing at home 38-7 to Miami. Just the worst result possible for Pitt. I mean, it didn't matter how much they lost if they lost, because they weren't going to win the ACC. They weren't going to get to the ACC championship. Weren't going to win the ACC, no matter what if they lost. But just losing the way they did, just getting blown out. And you had a lot of chances, just like the Notre Dame game, to make a couple plays here and there and stay in it and keep fighting. And the same stories in the Notre Dame game. Pitt got destroyed on the at the line of scrimmage on both sides. The O-line was pushed around all game by those edge rushers, Akeem Messidor and Ruben Bain for Miami. And, I mean, really the whole D-line got pressure against Pitt consistently. It made it really hard for Mason Heinschel, but Heinschel missed some plays. He took some sacks he shouldn't have. And just kind of the same old story this season. Even when Pitt was winning, this line was not performing well. And Mason Heinschel was taking a lot of sacks that were on the O-line, but sometimes he just didn't throw it away or just scramble out when he needed to. And the thing there is he's going to learn that. He's a true freshman. It's his first games in college and against this kind of competition. And so I give him a pass because he's going to learn. And I really hope that he stays with Pitt going forward. It's going to be really tough for Pitt to keep him just because a lot of teams want quarterback play and have better O-lines to protect him. So that's going to be something Pitt needs to address in the offseason, hopefully through recruiting, but also through the transfer portal. And, just a domination on both lines of scrimmage. The O-line for Miami did a really nice job on Pitt for a lot of the game. We've said it all year, Pitt's D-line is very undersized. They're very thin at that position. And they bring in transfers from Eastern Michigan, from Utah State, and that's kind of the result. And those are good players, certainly. Joey Zielinski is a good player. He made plays on Saturday. Blaine Spires has made plays all season for Pitt. But, Jeff Percy didn't play much for Michigan. Keith Gouveia from Richmond. Kendall Stanley from Charlotte. These guys coming from Group of 5, coming from FCS. Obviously Percy from Michigan, but he didn't really play much. That's where Pitt's going to have to look, and that's where they have looked to get players out of the transfer portal. But there's a ceiling, and there's a that's what it is. There's a ceiling to the production when you're going up against a Miami, a Notre Dame, the top programs in the country that have bigger, stronger athletes. There's the reason they're highly recruited and highly touted and 4-star and 5-star for a reason. And so that's just why Pitt's in a tough spot. And a lot of these programs are in a tough spot because they just can't compete at the lines of scrimmage. And Pitt's had this issue for a while. They need to figure out this O-line. It has to be the big keys this offseason have to be bringing Heinschel back, paying him, and bringing him back for next season, and bringing in O-linemen. Like O-linemen, either whether that's recruiting, I don't care if they're true freshmen, if they're highly touted, obviously signing day's on Wednesday. If they're highly touted, then whoever the best linemen are, you got to put them in. Doesn't matter if they're true freshmen or if they're redshirt senior. And they got to really sell that in the transfer portal. Hey, we got Mason Heinschel, we got one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Don't you want to block for him? And because Pitt's not going to beat out these other schools in terms of money. They're just not. And so you have to really sell them on the actual performance, who you're blocking for. Hey, if you look good playing for us here with this quarterback blocking him, you have NFL potential. So that's going to be the key for Pitt, is retaining Heinschel and getting bigger, more talented guys on the offensive and defensive lines. That's really, and really corner as well in the secondary and safety. McIntyre, he's been a really good Pitt man and everything, but he's just not the greatest. Tamon Lynham's not great. Rashad Battle has his moments, but he's been in college for like 7 years, so he's going to be gone. I think Lynham's gone as a senior, so that'll be a key for Pitt. But really just the lines of scrimmage, just blocking for Heinschel, retaining Heinschel next season. Pitt will play in a bowl game here. It'll be against a Power 4 team, certainly. and we'll have to see who that is. ESPN had them. One person at ESPN had Pitt playing Minnesota in the Pinstripe Bowl. Another had Pitt playing Arizona in the Holiday Bowl. Obviously, you'd much rather prefer playing Arizona in the Holiday Bowl. I think that could be a fun game. Minnesota's not. I mean, if Pitt's playing at full strength, Minnesota should not be an issue. And that's the Pinstripe Bowl. You're playing at Yankee Stadium. We've seen that before. It's not exciting. Another one had them playing Penn State. I don't know what bowl that is, but wouldn't that be something? A lot of Pitt fans don't want that. I love that. Pitt versus Penn State. You get a win there and have some bragging rights, even though obviously it's a disastrous season for Penn State. But they end up getting to a bowl, so they still don't have a coach. But that's if you're Pitt, that's what you're hoping for, a good bowl game. That loss, the way they did, probably takes them out of like the Pop-Tart Bowl, which, all jokes aside, is actually, that's one of the best bowl games. Not other than the playoffs. That's usually between like 9-3, 8-4 teams, some of the better teams. So that would have been fun if Pitt played in the Pop-Tart Bowl, but it's probably gonna be like, if Miami misses the playoff, they'll probably be in it, or Georgia Tech or something, with their 9-3 record, or SMU, someone like that. So I'll talk more about Pitt going forward, I guess. But 8-4, still a lot to be proud of with this season. Certainly at 2-2, if you would have said Pitt would end up 8-4, I would have been very happy with that. Obviously, you'd like to make the ACC championship, and I think if Pitt did, they'd win it. But they showed when they played Miami and they just got destroyed that Miami's the best team in the ACC. It's clear. They're the most talented, and they're not going to be in the ACC championship, which I'm going to talk about on the other side of this break. But good season for Pitt. Again, hoping Heinzel comes back, hoping Ja'Karian Turner comes back for that matter. Hopefully a lot of these wide receivers come back, and hopefully they get bigger and stronger and more talented on the O-line and D-line. But coming up on the other side of the break, I'm going to talk about college football playoff. I'm going to talk about some of the scenarios with some teams, the cases for Miami, for Notre Dame, for BYU, and whatever is going on in the ACC. Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ, 670 AM. And welcome back to the Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM, Point Park's radio station. I want to talk about some of the college football playoff implications. Obviously, Ohio State took care of Michigan in the big game, They snapped their 4-game losing streak in the game against Michigan. And really, I mean, they were the much better team. They end up winning by 18, took care of business. They look like the best team in college football. But hey, they haven't played Indiana. They didn't play Oregon. The best team they played, arguably, I mean, is Texas, but that was like a weird game, first game of the season. They played Washington, they played Michigan. But they haven't played like the toughest schedule. But they're obviously the best number one. They deserve to be number one in college football. But Indiana destroys Purdue. So it's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, the Big Ten Championship. That'll be very interesting. Indiana's team obviously definitely better this season than even last year when they made the playoff. And they'll be a top 4. The loser of this game will be a top 4 seed no matter what. I'm pretty certain. The committee has made it clear they're not going to penalize a team for playing in a conference championship. That's a game afforded to the best of the best. So the other matchup is in the SEC, Alabama, Georgia. I was hoping A&M would make it, but Marcel Reed decided to throw some awful interceptions against Texas. And so it's Bama, Georgia, very familiar SEC championship here. And going to be very interesting. People are saying, could Alabama miss the playoff if they lose in the SEC championship? I don't see that at all happening. I mean, SMU lost in the ACC championship last year and they made it. And like I said before, the committee doesn't want to penalize teams for playing in that conference championship because no other teams, most of the other teams are not playing that week. So I think regardless, both these teams are solidly in. And going to be interesting to see who wins that, though. If Alabama wins, they probably get a top 4 seed, even with 2 losses. If Georgia wins, they definitely get a top 4 seed. But both teams are in regardless. Big 12, Texas Tech, they destroyed West Virginia 49-0. Just a kind of disrespectful game by Texas Tech. But BYU won against UCF. It's going to be those two in the Big 12 championship. You'd expect Texas Tech to win that game, but hey, if BYU wins, they're obviously in. Texas Tech's going to be in, and that's another spot that Notre Dame or Miami or Vanderbilt would not get. So that's going to be compelling too. You'd figure Texas Tech wins that game, but what if BYU pulls off an upset? It would be an upset. I think Texas Tech's favored by in double digits against BYU, so that would be an upset for certain. And I think Texas Tech's a better team. They destroyed them earlier in the season. But hey, it's a new game. It starts 0-0. Anything can happen, but that would be like a chaos scenario. If BYU makes it, then none of Notre Dame or Miami or Vanderbilt or Texas, whoever, are going to be in. So Oklahoma eked out a win against LSU. They outgained LSU by like 200 yards, but had 3 turnovers. They're just a goofy team. Their defense is elite, but their offense is going to keep every team in the game with them. But they're good at winning these close games, and so that'll be big going forward. I'll get to Ole Miss. They had a nice win over Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. They'll be in. It just depends on if they're going to host a home playoff game or not with Lane Kiffin leaving for LSU. The committee takes into account that stuff, even though you could argue maybe they shouldn't. But I'm going to talk about that in a second, Lane Kiffin here. But and then in the ACC, Virginia, they took care of business. Going into Saturday, if Virginia and SMU won, that would be the ACC championship. Virginia did their part. They took care of Virginia Tech. Huge win for them, not only to make the ACC championship, but to beat their rival for only the 3rd time in the 21st century. And good for Virginia, but SMU loses to Cal in Berkeley at 11:40 near midnight. And that opens the door. Obviously, Miami beat Pitt, so Pitt was eliminated. Georgia Tech lost to Pitt last week. They were out. And so Duke beat Wake Forest in a game nobody really watched. But because they won, they had the tiebreakers in these scenarios. And at 7-5, Duke is in the ACC championship game. Now, that's not really crazy out of the ordinary. In the ACC for years, the Coastal champion would be 8-4 or 7-5 or something and lose to Clemson by 40. But there's no dominant Clemson this season in the ACC, and the closest team to that, Miami, is not in the ACC championship. And so there's a scenario where if Duke actually wins, if they win and they're 8-5, and JMU wins and they're 12-1, and whoever wins the American is going to be in. Would you put an 8-5 Duke over a 12-1 James Madison? I don't think you would. And so if Duke wins, there is a scenario where the ACC doesn't get a playoff team. There's also a scenario where Miami gets in as an at-large, and then the ACC does inadvertently. But that is, people are saying a doomsday scenario. It really is. And it's crazy that ended up being the case. Duke is the worst of those teams that were 6-2 in the conference. And for these tiebreakers are so goofy. And any good team Duke played this year, they lost. And it's really a disappointment that this is what it was with the ACC. But that's going to be what it is, and so I'm going to be rooting for Virginia just because they've had a 10-2 season and they deserve to make the playoff here. If anybody does out of the ACC other than Miami, I think Miami should be playing in the ACC championship, but that's how the tiebreakers are. So it's stupid to me as well, but that's what it is. So, and then North Texas and Tulane are going to be facing off for the American and to make the playoff. Obviously, James Madison 11-1. But so you're looking who's in for sure. You're looking at Ohio State, Indiana, Alabama, Georgia, Texas Tech. Win or lose, they'll be in. A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. I think Ole Miss will be in even with the their head coach departing. So that's 8. And then you're looking at the ACC champion, or if Duke wins, the Sun Belt champion in the American, that's 10. And so there's 2 spots there. Oh, and Oregon. I forgot about Oregon. So there's 1 spot for a Miami, a Notre Dame, a Vanderbilt, a Texas, Utah, whoever you want to throw in there. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what the dominoes that fall and where the committee has Miami and Notre Dame on Tuesday night, because that'll determine a lot here as to who. And BYU, I didn't even mention BYU. So BYU, if BYU wins, they take that spot, that last spot, and then all those teams I mentioned are out. So obviously those teams are going to be rooting for Texas Tech to win the Big 12 and knock BYU out and have one of them make it. So very compelling stuff there in the college football playoff race. I want to close with some of these coaches. Lane Kiffin obviously waiting till the very last minute to make his decision that he is leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU and coach the LSU Tigers. A lot of people criticizing him because he waited so long. Now Ole Miss, and not only that, but his announcement that he was leaving for LSU, he's saying, Ole Miss, I wanted to coach the rest of the season, but Ole Miss did not allow, I'm paraphrasing, but did not allow me to. Dude, you're going to another program. You're going to a rival program to coach. You said you'd rather, with all the success you've had, the connections you made at Ole Miss, you said I'd rather coach at this rival program than Ole Miss. In what world are you afforded the opportunity to coach in the playoffs for that team? Not only is it a bad look for the program, it's a bad look for you, and it takes away opportunities and time for Ole Miss to conduct a coaching search and you recruit players and recruit out of the transfer portal and get their NIL situation figured out. So just a really bad situation, really unfortunate for Ole Miss. So, I mean, if I'm Kiffin, I don't blame him for going to LSU. That's a premier program. But I would have done it earlier. Total miss of my decisions. I would have left the program. And then Ole Miss has time to look for a coach. Now they hired Pete Golding, their coordinator, to be head coach. So they stay in-house. I think that's a solid hire. But they really had to do that because there's really what candidates are out there now that are available still for Ole Miss. So Lane Kiffin, didn't do the greatest thing for Ole Miss on the way out, and that's why a lot of Ole Miss fans are upset. But Ole Miss, they can still do stuff in the playoffs here, although I still think there are a lot of teams that are stronger. But John Summerall hired at Florida. They pivoted to John Summerall. I think that's a good hire for Florida. But we got to see how it plays out. You never know. You can say it's a good hire, but you never know until the games are played and the results are there. Alex Golesh goes to Auburn. Great job by Auburn. I think Auburn wanted John Summerall, but when Florida realized they were out of the race for Lane Kiffin, they pivoted to John Summerall, and Auburn did good to pivot to Alex Golesh, who's won at South Florida. There's a good culture there at South Florida, and who knows how to win, and is a good voice in the locker room. So I think that's a good hire as well. But again, we got to see how it plays out. And Arkansas gets Ryan Silverfield from Memphis after Eric Morris from North Texas picked Oklahoma State over Arkansas. Arkansas is in a bad state of affairs right now. It's unfortunate, but they were going to get what, the quote-unquote scraps. They were going to get what they were going to get. These coaches were going to pick these more stable programs or programs with higher ceilings over Arkansas, and they did the best they could, I think. Silverfield, I don't know. At Memphis, he's kind of underperformed at times with more talented rosters. This season, they end the season losing, 3 in a row? And, so I don't know. We'll see how that one plays out. But Michigan State fired Jonathan Smith, and they hire Pat Fitzgerald. I think that's going to be a good hire if Pat Fitzgerald can get their NIL figured out and everything. Obviously, James Franklin went to Virginia Tech a few weeks ago. That's a slam dunk now with Penn State having no idea who their next coach is going to be. Penn State's in a really tough situation right now. They fired their coach early, so they have plenty of time to pick a coach, and they still don't have a coach. It's a tough spot for Penn State right now. But, and apparently Kentucky fired Mark Stoops. So, not a shocker, but he was a good stabilizer for that program for a long time. But that's going to do it for the show. Running out of time here. Thank you everyone for listening in. I think I'll be back next week. I should be. I don't know how it's going to work over break. I probably won't be doing shows over break after these couple weeks here. But thank you everyone for tuning in to the Sports Scoop with Nathan Schivins. I will be back next week for sure. But until then, have a great week. Get through the week, and I'll see you on the other side. Sports Scuba Nathan Schivins, WPPJ 670 AM.